Finding affordable, quality childcare is a concern for parents all across Canada, and in the usual fashion, the Justin Trudeau Liberals have swooped in to make matters worse. After Prime Minister Justin Trudeau scrapped Stephen Harper's family tax cut, which allowed families to income split to remain in lower tax brackets, many Canadian families now face financial strain due to rising taxes and inflation, with taxation outpacing spending on basic necessities and high childcare costs as families increasingly require both parents to work just to keep their heads above proverbial water. With nearly half of young children in childcare age 0 to 5 and wait lists growing, Trudeau's Liberals pledged $30 billion over 5 years for early learning and childcare agreements under Budget 2021 and began implementing the program with provinces and territories in 2022. After the first 5 years, an astonishing $9.2 billion will be required annually to sustain this already fiscally flopping program. The program aimed to cut childcare fees by 50% and offer $10 a day childcare. Here, Liberal Minister Jenna Sudds touts it as saving families thousands annually.
Having kids in childcare is expensive. As a mom of 3, I understand. Our $10 a day childcare program is saving families across the country thousands of dollars every year.
Except that the data paints a different picture. According to Stats Canada, the number of children aged 0 to 5 who take part in childcare has actually decreased since 2019. Interestingly, the amount of children on wait lists for care has significantly increased over the last year, with a nearly 10% jump between 2022 and 2023 rate when this program was rolling out. This trend dates back to at least 2019, with the proportion of those who reported lack of availability increased from 7% in 2019 to 18% in 2023. When one looks at the data around decreases in childcare expenses, only center-based childcare resulted in a noticeable difference. Joining me to discuss this program and the impact it's having on childcare providers and their families is Crystal Churcher, chair for a newly formed organization called AACE, the Association of Alberta Childcare Entrepreneurs. Churcher says she and other childcare providers signed onto this agreement with the federal government without fully understanding the red tape and administrative burden that this would have on their day-to-day operations.
Parameters put on us by this agreement, there was a lot of frustration. I know for myself, I have a private center in rural northern Alberta, and I had hoped to open another center in southern Alberta at the time after I signed the $10 a day agreement. Went and had my business evaluated to use as financing, because that's the wonderful thing about the private sector is we finance our own childcare spaces. And I realized quite quickly that when you can't control your fees on your business, you can't expand your business, you have no availability to grow under the $10 a day program at that time, there's really no value left in it. So I was upset. I was really angry. I felt very sold out by the province and the federal government at that time, and really rallied to find other private operators in Alberta. We started a WhatsApp chat that grew to like 450 private operators at the time. And from there, our association was formalized, and we've grown over the last 2 years. We now represent nonprofit operators, day home operators, because we've realized that the issues with this $10 a day program are not business model driven, regardless of the Liberal campaigns against the private sector. Nonprofit, private, day homes were all facing the same issues under this. So we represent all of them now in our association.
Churcher further criticizes the program for restricting access to varied childcare options and limiting parental choice, which negatively affects the experience of children heading into, essentially, Walmart-style childcare.
This is supposed to be, it started off as a universal program. It's now, an average program, they say, but it's supposed to be accessible for all Canadians, regardless of where they live, regardless of income. But it's not. It's only accessible if you choose a government-funded nonprofit childcare center, because for the majority of provinces, you can't access this in a private sector. And that's limiting parental choice. And our association has always been very strong advocates for the belief that children and childcare are in the arena of parents, not of government, to decide on what's best for families. And this program nationally does not do that. It really restricts parental choice, restricts access. And I think, one thing that's resonated lately for me is hearing it called, good feminist social policy. Most of us who run childcare centers, especially the smaller nonprofit centers and private centers like mine, we're female entrepreneurs, we're women, we're moms. And this is not feminist social policy that works for us. You've essentially expropriated our businesses and rolling it out as a nonprofit program, just a one-size-fits-all. So we really have issue with the affordability component because it's only accessible for a few families. One in three can actually get a childcare space. That's created a massive demand overnight that can't be met by a one-size-fits-all nonprofit system. And when it's underfunded the way it has been, we're very concerned about long-term impact on quality because cuts have to be made in order to fit a $10 a day funding model, and that has to come from somewhere. We're regulated. We need a certain amount of staff, certain amount of space, licensing requirements. So as you cut back funding, you're cutting back on supports and all those extra things that children really need and care right now. A lot of operators have cut back on things like food programs. The cost of food has gone up so much in the last few years. I mean, you can see it in your own grocery bills. Imagine feeding 100 children in a childcare center when your fees have been frozen. Cutting back on food services, cutting back on field trips, music programs, all those extra things that are not necessarily required of childcare, that's where the cuts are being made. So, it's really impacting the children at the end of the day.
The funding cuts also underscore a larger issue with this program, which is that childcare was always under provincial jurisdiction. And now that the feds have taken it over, previously available grants and funds through provincial programs are no longer available.
One of the big challenges of this rolling out federally is that we had provincial programs in place. We have a provincial subsidy program for low-income families and provincial wage top-ups, wage enhancements, professional development funding for our educators, which are great. And those now have become part of this federal program. So it's now become a one-size kind of childcare program. You're either all or nothing. If you cannot access this as an operator, if you're not included in this, or you choose not to be included in this, then your low-income families have no access to subsidies, and your staff can't access their wage enhancements. So it really binds us to this program.
In response to all of this, the AACE launched a At What Cost campaign, which highlights issues with cash flow, inflation, administrative burdens, the erosion of operational control, compromises to quality and inclusivity, and access to reliable childcare. But it's the latter that Churcher says hits home the hardest.
There is no access to this program. So again, it sounds wonderful. The intentions behind this to provide affordable childcare to Canadians is amazing, and I think very well deserved for families to have that. But when only 1 in 3 families can actually get a $10 a day space, it's an illusion of equity and access. And it's really not anything that means anything on the ground, because you're either going into a situation where you have to just take whatever you can get as a parent, so you have no choice because you just need childcare to work, and you're going to have to just take whatever's available, or you're on a wait list with 500 other families, and your child will probably age out before you ever get access to this affordable childcare program. So I think access has been the number one issue that we're hearing across the country, not just in Alberta.
Echoing issues that persist across the country, the AACE has formed a national committee on childcare reform, calling for a funding model from the federal government that is similar to what already exists in Quebec.
Now, we've seen that this is really a made in Ottawa plan. It's made by a federal government that doesn't build childcare, that doesn't administer childcare, doesn't even regulate childcare. This is provincial jurisdiction childcare. And we also see that Quebec, receives an envelope funding model from the federal government that allows them to have no strings attached to their childcare funding. They get to implement it in province, how they see fit and how works for their families. We would like that for other provinces. That's what we're asking for, is for envelope funding that allows the province to essentially work with operators to create a childcare program that works, or to support what's actually working in their province, because there's some provinces that have childcare programs that are working quite well, and let's support that. Let's not burden them with more administration and more red tape and take more money away from them so we can administer this on two levels. I guess my message to the federal government, to our federal MPs and ministers like Jenna Suds, would be to really let's remove the politics from this. Let's take away this ideology that has really rolled this program through, that somehow it has to be a certain way. It has to be a nonprofit childcare system across the country. It has to be publicly funded. Parents can think for themselves, and parents know best about what is right for their family and for their children, not government. And parents are essentially paying for this program. So I think it's time that we bring this back to parents and allow them that choice in what they want for their family, because we cannot keep up with the demand by rolling out a one-size-fits-all public system. And there's not enough money to fund it properly when there's no private sector. I don't know where they're getting their numbers from, but it's already underfunded. And if we continue to go down this road, we're going to end up with really reduced quality care for children. And that's not where we want to be.
That's why the National Committee has formed to call on the federal government, which is always so set on listening to lived experiences, to listen to their voices in advocating for programming that does not institutionalize children and create big box childcare centers.
We're not researchers, we're not policymakers. This is coming from on-the-ground operators, the front line of childcare, I think, and people that are really seeing how this program is working on the ground. And I think that's really important moving forward, that we understand how it's working and what each province has that is working and what isn't, and really listening to those operators and parents to understand, so we can build something that actually does work. So that's our goal, is bring operators together to bring a voice for parents who are outside of this program, which is 2/3 of Canadian families, who have no part in this program, and we want them to be included. We want them to have access. So, that's where the national group is coming from, and we've had 6 provinces join. We're looking to grow, and we're going to be looking, to bring forward some, concerns federally, so that the federal government can hear from operators across the country, not just from researchers, but from on-the-ground childcare operators. There's been no engagement with on-the-ground operators who are living the experience of this $10 a day program. One of the buzzwords I keep hearing too is to create fairer systems, to make sure that things are fair. And this program is so far from fair that it's just hypocritical to keep hearing that it's working.
There's a growing suspicion that research foundations, lobbyists, and unions are exploiting parental desperation for affordable childcare to push a larger agenda and institutionalize the daycare system, while sidelining the free market where individuals can afford to pay directly for services and employees. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. If you'd like to see smaller and better government, then please consider supporting us in our accountability journalism at rebelnewsstore.com. There you can find fun, freedom-loving designs like the one I have here, Freedom Isn't Free, and a ton more. Maybe I'll even catch you in the wild wearing some of your freedom-loving swag. You can also use code TAMARA10, that's TAMARA 10, to save 10% off of your total order at checkout. All of that at rebelnewsstore.com. Don't forget to use code TAMARA10. Thanks for your support.